She ran away. I stayed, alone with myself.
I'm not the type of guy who expects much from life. A decent cup of coffee that doesn't taste like dishwater, maybe some streaming service that actually works without buffering every 5 seconds, and the basic human courtesy of not being abandoned in a foreign country by the person who promised to love me till death do us part. Apparently, that last one was asking way too much. I woke up that morning in our beachfront resort in Cabo with the kind of drowsy optimism that only comes from expensive thread counts and the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. The sun was filtering through white curtains like some kind of tropical paradise postcard, and I stretched out my arm expecting to find my wife, Jessica Hartley, probably scrolling through Instagram or planning which overpriced smoothie bowl we'd be photographing for her 3,000 followers at breakfast. Instead, my hand hit cold sheets and the devastating realization that I was completely alone. Not alone like she's in the bathroom getting ready alone, but alone like something is fundamentally wrong with this entire picture kind of alone. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, squinting at the screen with one eye still refusing to fully participate in consciousness. That's when I saw it, the text message that would basically define the next chapter of my life, and definitely not in any kind of motivational poster way. LMAO, you should have seen your face while you were sleeping. This is going to be absolutely hilarious. You'll see. I stared at those words like they were written in ancient hieroglyphics that I couldn't possibly decode. Hilarious? What exactly was hilarious? Did I snore particularly loudly? Did I drool on the pillow? Was there a spider crawling on my face that she heroically removed while I slept? My brain, still operating at maybe 40% capacity, tried desperately to piece together what possible scenario could warrant this level of amusement at 7 a.m. on what was supposed to be our romantic vacation. Then I noticed the silence. Not the peaceful, meditative kind of silence that you pay extra money for at wellness retreats. This was the wrong kind of silence. The kind that makes your stomach drop straight to your feet and your fight-or-flight response start doing warm-up stretches in preparation for whatever's coming. I sat up in bed, suddenly very awake, and looked around the room with increasing panic. Her suitcase, that massive purple monstrosity she'd insisted on bringing, despite my completely reasonable protests about baggage fees and whether we really needed that much stuff for 1 week, was gone. Not just moved to another corner of the room, but vanished like it had never existed in the first place. I stumbled out of bed, my feet hitting the cold tile floor, and started frantically checking everywhere like some kind of deranged detective investigating the case of the missing wife. The bathroom, empty. The closet, empty. Under the bed, nothing. Her sandals were gone, those ridiculous flowered ones with the little decorative touches that she'd bought at a market in downtown Cabo 2 days ago, claiming they absolutely spoke to her soul, and she just had to have them. Her phone charger had vanished into thin air. Even that god-awful sun hat she absolutely loved, the one that made her look like she was auditioning for a role in some retired librarian's vacation photo album, was completely absent. My hands started shaking, not exactly from fear, but from that special cocktail of confusion, anger, and what the actual hell is happening that your body serves up when reality completely stops making any kind of sense. I grabbed my phone again and scrolled through our entire text thread, desperately looking for clues, explanations, or maybe some hidden message that said, "Psyche, I'm just hiding in the closet waiting to jump out." Nothing. Just that one single cryptic text about my sleeping face being hilarious. I did what any rational person would do in this absolutely insane situation. I called the hotel front desk, trying to keep my voice steady. My voice came out way higher than I intended, cracking like some 13-year-old kid going through puberty. "Hi, yes, this is room 318. Did my wife leave? Like, check out of the hotel without me?" I tried desperately to sound casual, like this was a totally normal question that people asked every single day. Like I wasn't currently standing in a luxury resort room in Mexico, wearing nothing but boxer shorts and existential dread, questioning every single life choice that had led me to this exact moment in time. The receptionist's voice came through with the kind of aggressive cheerfulness that felt personally offensive given my current mental state. "Yes, sir. Miss Hartley checked out at 3 o'clock this morning. She mentioned that you had separate travel plans and she didn't want to wake you. She specifically said to tell you to enjoy your extra week here at the resort." Separate travel plans. Those 3 words hit me like someone had just taken a baseball bat directly to my face. We booked these tickets together 6 months ago. I was sitting right there when she clicked the purchase button on both our flights. I remember it clearly because she made me triple-check all the dates, and then actually accused me of not being excited enough about the trip, which seemed unfair since I'd taken time off work specifically for this. I'd been excited. I'd taken vacation days, coordinated everything with my boss, told all my friends I'd be completely offline for a week. This was supposed to be our romantic getaway, our chance to reconnect after a stressful year, our Instagram-worthy vacation that would make everyone back home jealous of our apparently perfect marriage. My hands were definitely shaking now, trembling like leaves in a windstorm. I hung up on the overly cheerful receptionist mid-sentence and immediately called the airline, navigating through what felt like 47 different automated menus before finally reaching an actual human being who could help me. She confirmed my absolute worst nightmare in that professionally sympathetic voice they probably trained for. "Yes, Mr. Parker, I can see here in our system that your wife contacted us yesterday afternoon and changed your return flight to next Friday. She mentioned in her request that you wanted to extend your stay in Mexico for personal reasons. She took the 6:30 a.m. flight back to Chicago this morning. Would you like me to help you with anything else today?" I stood there in the middle of that beautiful hotel room with its ocean view and luxury amenities, phone pressed to my ear, barefoot on the cold tile floor, holding a half-eaten mango that I'd apparently grabbed from the complimentary fruit basket at some point during this unfolding crisis without even realizing it. The mango was dripping juice down my hand onto the floor. I watched it drip, completely mesmerized, because it was so much easier than actually processing what was happening to my life. My wife. The woman I'd married 4 years ago in that overpriced barn venue she'd absolutely insisted on despite my terrible allergies to hay and basically everything else in a barn. The woman who'd promised to be my partner through thick and thin, through better or worse, through all of life's challenges. The woman who literally stood in front of 200 people and vowed to honor and cherish me for the rest of our lives together, had just abandoned me in Mexico like I was some goldfish she'd gotten bored of feeding. And apparently she thought the whole thing was absolutely hilarious. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, still clutching that stupid dripping mango, and stared at my phone as another text popped up on the screen. "Don't worry about anything. I'll pick you up next week when you fly back. Miss you already, babe." Miss me? She missed me? Lady, you just committed what I'm pretty sure legally counts as spousal abandonment with a side of psychological warfare. And you're hitting me with kiss emojis like this is all completely normal behavior? I looked around the empty room, what used to be our room but was now just my room, and tried to figure out if this whole situation counted as some kind of abduction, a divorce starter pack, or just pure stupidity with sunscreen and vacation vibes. The mango juice was still dripping steadily onto the floor. Somewhere outside my window, I could hear people laughing and splashing around in the pool, living their normal, non-abandoned lives without a care in the world. And me? I was sitting alone in paradise, holding tropical fruit and wondering if my marriage had just ended via text message and budget airline logistics. Spoiler alert for anyone wondering, it absolutely had. I just didn't fully realize it yet. I spent the first hour after discovering my wife's great disappearing act trying desperately to convince myself this was all some kind of elaborate joke. You know the kind where someone jumps out from behind a potted plant yelling, "Surprise!" and everyone laughs and hugs it out, and later you all pretend this wasn't a deeply traumatic experience that'll require several years of intensive therapy to properly unpack. I genuinely expected Jessica to come bursting through the hotel room door any second with her phone out, recording my reaction for TikTok, or whatever social media platform she was currently obsessed with this particular week. I even checked behind the curtains, which definitely wasn't my proudest moment as a grown adult, but desperate times call for desperate measures. And apparently, I'd become the kind of person who searches hotel rooms for his hiding wife like we're playing the world's worst and most emotionally damaging game of hide and seek. But no, she wasn't hiding anywhere. Not behind the curtains, not under the bed, not in the shower doing that thing where you stay really quiet and try your absolute hardest not to laugh and give away your position. She was just gone. Actually, legitimately, no joke, this is really happening, gone. Probably somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico right about now, sitting comfortably in seat 17B, sipping her complimentary ginger ale and scrolling through her phone, thinking about how absolutely hilarious this entire situation was and how she couldn't wait to tell everyone the story. My phone buzzed yet again, and I looked down at it with the kind of dread usually reserved for checking your bank account after a night of drunk online shopping. Relax, babe. It's just a prank. I'll tell everyone back home how much you freaked out. It's going to be so funny when I show them your texts. I read that message at least 3 times, each time desperately hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something that actually made any kind of sense. A prank. She was calling this whole nightmare a prank. Like putting plastic wrap over the toilet seat is a prank. Like hiding someone's car keys is a prank. Like moving furniture 2 inches so they bump into it is a prank. Abandoning your spouse in a foreign country and literally stealing his return flight home is not a prank. It's a felony with vacation vibes and possibly several international laws being broken. I typed out approximately 15 different responses, each one progressively angrier than the last, but I deleted every single one of them before sending. What was I even supposed to say? Hey honey, great prank, really got me good there. Nothing says comedy gold quite like international abandonment and betrayal of marriage vows? No, she didn't deserve the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten so completely under my skin, even though she absolutely had. Even though I was currently spiraling in a hotel room, trying desperately to figure out if my marriage had just ended, or if this was just another Tuesday in what I was starting to think of as the Jessica Hartley Chaos Show. I needed coffee immediately. Not the wimpy, disappointing hotel room coffee that tastes like sad water that's been filtered through old gym socks, but real coffee. The kind of coffee that could wake someone up from a medically induced coma, or possibly fuel a small rocket ship. And the kind of coffee that might actually help me process the fact that my wife had just gaslit me across international borders and thought it was entertainment. I got dressed quickly in yesterday's clothes because apparently all my clean laundry was packed in Jessica's suitcase, because of course it was, and headed downstairs to the hotel bar. It was barely 9 in the morning, which felt simultaneously too early to start drinking, but also seemed like exactly the right time given my current circumstances and the fact that my entire life had just imploded before breakfast. The bartender gave me a look that clearly communicated he'd seen this particular movie before, and I was just the latest rerun. "Strongest coffee you've got," I said, sliding onto a bar stool with the weight of the world on my shoulders. "And maybe a map to the nearest U.S. embassy, if that's something you happen to keep behind the bar for situations exactly like this one." He smiled with genuine sympathy and poured me something that looked like it could strip paint off walls. Perfect. I sat there trying very hard not to look like a man whose entire life had just imploded before he'd even had his morning coffee, which is significantly harder than it sounds. I kept obsessively checking my phone, partly hoping for some kind of explanation that would make all of this make sense, and partly hoping Jessica would text something so completely ridiculous that I could screenshot it and use it as evidence in the divorce proceedings I was increasingly convinced were somewhere in my near future. That's when I noticed her. The woman sitting 3 seats down from me with a laptop absolutely covered in stickers that looked like they'd been carefully collected from every corner of the internet and various travels. "Wi-Fi wife," read one of them. "Exes don't deserve tax refunds," announced another one proudly. There was a third sticker that just said, "Nope," in bold capital letters, which honestly felt like the most relatable thing I'd seen all morning. She had this incredibly calm, focused energy about her. The kind that suggested she had her life together in ways that I very currently and obviously did not. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, glasses perched on her nose, fingers flying across the keyboard like she was either writing the great American novel or at least a very strongly worded and detailed Yelp review about something. I must have been staring pretty obviously because she looked up from her intense typing and caught me right in the middle of my existential crisis stare. Instead of being weird or uncomfortable about it like most people would be, she just smiled slightly in acknowledgement and went right back to her laptop. Professional. Unbothered. Definitely not the kind of person who would abandon someone in Mexico for laughs and social media content. I turned back to my paint stripper coffee and pulled out my phone, Googling U.S. Embassy Cabo, Mexico, because that seemed like a responsible and adult thing to do in this situation. I was completely absorbed in trying to figure out if I actually needed an appointment or could just show up and explain that my wife had committed what I was pretty sure was at least 3 or 4 different crimes when I didn't notice the woman had moved significantly closer until she spoke directly to me. "Let me guess," she said, her voice carrying the slightly amused tone of someone who'd personally witnessed enough tourist disasters over the years to write an entire book about them. Stranded tourist situation? I looked up from my phone, probably looking exactly as pathetic and lost as I felt in that moment. Close enough, I said, attempting what I hoped was a smile, but definitely came out more like a grimace. Stranded husband, actually. My wife thought it would be absolutely hilarious to disappear in the middle of the night and steal my return flight home as some kind of prank. Her eyebrow raised in that very specific way that somehow communicated an entire paragraph of judgment and disbelief without her having to say a single additional word. Funny? I suppose that depends entirely on who's doing the laughing, and you definitely don't seem like the one finding any humor in this particular situation. Yeah, it's weird how being completely abandoned in a foreign country really eliminates my sense of comedy, I said, genuinely surprised by just how bitter I sounded saying it out loud to a complete stranger. Must be something about the international betrayal that seriously dampens the mood. She actually laughed at that response. A real, genuine laugh. Not the polite kind that people do when they're uncomfortable and just trying to fill awkward silence. That's completely fair and reasonable. I'm Rachel, by the way. Rachel Martinez. Travel writer, professional observer of tourist disasters and general chaos, and apparently now a direct witness to whatever the situation is that you've got going on here. Tom Parker, I said, reaching out to shake her offered hand. Professional disaster at this point, amateur abandoned husband, and current unwilling star of what I'm calling How I Lost My Wife and Found Serious Trust Issues, a Mexican adventure story. Catchy title, Rachel said with genuine amusement, settling herself comfortably onto the bar stool directly next to mine. Could definitely use some work on the subtitle, though. Maybe something like A Tale of Betrayal, Budget Airlines, and Seriously Bad Decisions. I actually laughed, and it felt surprisingly good. Weird, but genuinely good. Like my face had completely forgotten how to do anything except look confused and mildly panicked for the past 2 hours straight. Rachel gestured to my phone, where the embassy website was still pulled up and displayed. You're going about this the hard way, just so you know. The embassy really can't do much of anything unless she actually stole your passport, which I'm guessing she didn't. I immediately checked my wallet, relieved beyond measure to find my passport still safely tucked inside where it belonged. No, she left me that at least. And apparently a hotel room for another week that I definitely cannot afford on my own salary. Okay, so here's what we're going to do, Rachel said, with the immediate efficiency of someone who'd solved serious problems in foreign countries many times before. First, we get you a temporary room that you can actually afford without going bankrupt. There's a decent place just 2 blocks from here. Clean, affordable, no bed bugs or weird smells. Then we deal with getting you a flight home that doesn't cost your entire life savings or your firstborn child. And maybe if you're interested and haven't completely lost your appetite, we get you some really good tacos, because absolutely nobody should have to deal with spousal abandonment on a completely empty stomach. I stared at her in disbelief. This complete and total stranger who was being infinitely kinder to me in 5 minutes than my own wife had been in the past 24 hours. Why are you helping me? I mean, you literally just met me. I could be a serial butcher or a timeshare salesman or something equally terrible. Rachel shrugged casually, closing her laptop with a decisive click. Because my ex once left me stranded at an airport terminal because he said I walked too slow and was annoying him. Took me about a week to fully realize that wasn't actually a flaw in my character, but rather a blessing in an incredibly effective disguise. Sometimes the trash really does take itself out, you know? I swore to myself that if I ever saw someone else in a similar situation, I'd pay that kindness forward, so here we are. My phone buzzed insistently again. Yet another text from Jessica. Miss you already, babes. 2 hearts and a kiss emoji, like everything was completely normal and fine. I showed the screen to Rachel, who made a face like she'd just tasted something that had expired months ago. Yeah, she said completely flatly. You're definitely going to need those tacos I mentioned. Probably several of them. And honestly, looking back on it now, she was absolutely right about that. Within about an hour of meeting her, this woman I'd known for exactly 60 minutes had somehow managed to find me a hotel room that didn't require me selling a kidney on the black market, helped me fill out some kind of complicated form for the airline that might, emphasis on might, get me a flight change without completely bankrupting me, and was currently leading me confidently through the winding streets of Cabo toward what she kept promising were genuinely life-changing tacos. I remained fairly skeptical about the whole life-changing part, mostly because my life had already changed pretty dramatically in the past few hours. and I really wasn't sure the tacos could possibly compete with spousal abandonment on the personal transformation scale. But I was genuinely hungry, completely exhausted, and following a stranger through Mexico seemed like exactly the kind of questionable decision-making I was apparently capable of right now. Rachel had this incredible energy about her that I could only describe as aggressively competent, like she'd seen enough chaos and disasters in her own life that absolutely nothing really fazed her anymore. She walked with clear purpose, dodged pushy street vendors with practiced ease, and somehow managed to look completely at home in a foreign country, while I was still trying desperately to remember if I'd even put on deodorant that morning. "So," she said casually as we navigated around a large group of tourists, taking endless selfies with a street performer dressed as an ancient Mayan warrior, "how long have you and the disappearing wife actually been married?" 4 years, I said, carefully stepping over a puddle that may or may not have actually been water. 4 years of what I genuinely thought was a normal marriage, but was apparently just me being the captive audience for her one-woman show of complete chaos and drama. Rachel laughed, that same genuine laugh from earlier. "Oh man, I know that exact feeling way too well. My ex used to call himself spontaneous and free-spirited. I called him unemployed and deeply irresponsible, but potato, right?" My phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. I didn't even need to look at the screen to know it was Jessica. She'd been texting every 15 minutes like absolute clockwork, each message somehow managing to be more oblivious than the last one. I pulled it out anyway because apparently I'm a complete glutton for punishment. "Don't be mad at me. Come on, lighten up. You're being way too serious about this. Everyone at home thinks this whole thing is absolutely hilarious." I showed the screen to Rachel, who made a sound that was half laugh and half completely disgusted snort. "Everyone at home thinks it's hilarious. Who exactly is everyone? Her other personality? The voices in her head? Her imaginary friends?" "Probably her mom," I muttered bitterly. "That woman genuinely thinks Jessica walks on water and can do no wrong. She could literally commit arson, and her mom would be like, 'Oh, she's just being creative with fire. That's just her artistic temperament.'" Rachel pulled the car up to a tiny taco stand that looked like it had existed forever. It wasn't fancy. No glowing signs or trendy decor, just 3 things on the menu, and all of them done perfectly. An older woman stood behind a smoking grill, eyeing us like she could read my entire sad life story in one glance. "2 al pastor, 1 carnitas," Rachel said smoothly, then turned to me. "You're not vegetarian or anything, right?" "At this point, I'd eat cardboard if it came with hot sauce," I said. The woman gave the faintest smile and got to work. We sat at a shaky plastic table on the sidewalk while I typed out yet another reply to Jessica, then erased it. I tried again. Deleted that one too. Rachel watched, amused but sympathetic. "You want my real advice?" she asked. "I don't think I have a choice." She grinned. "True. Don't text her back. Not yet. Let her stew in the silence. Make her wonder if you're mad, hurt, or just done. Right now she thinks this is still part of her little joke. She needs to realize it's not funny." I stared at my phone, reading through her stupid emoji-filled messages, and it hit me. Rachel was completely right. Every time I answered, even angrily, I was still playing Jessica's game, still giving her attention, still being the cleanup crew for her chaos. I set the phone face down on the wobbly table. "Okay, no replies. Radio silence." "Good man," Rachel said, nodding as our tacos arrived. "Now eat something. You look like a gust of wind could take you out." She wasn't wrong. I'd been living on caffeine and nerves since sunrise. The first bite of taco stopped me cold. It was unreal. Perfectly seasoned, sweet from the pineapple, smoky from the meat. For 30 seconds, I forgot I was a dumped husband eating away his problems on a street corner in Mexico. "Right," Rachel said, grinning. "You weren't kidding. These are insane." We ate in easy silence. It surprised me how natural it felt. Usually I'm bad at quiet moments with new people, but with Rachel, it didn't feel awkward. It just felt calm, like this was normal. Like eating tacos with a stranger was a perfectly good way to spend a Tuesday. Over the next few days, something strange happened. I started to feel peaceful. Not the fake kind where you pretend everything's fine, but real peace. The kind where you wake up and don't immediately check your phone for the next crisis. Rachel and I slipped into an easy rhythm that didn't need to be defined. Breakfast together, quiet work sessions, exploring the city, or sitting on the beach doing absolutely nothing. No pressure, no chaos. And then the memories started coming back. all the warning signs I'd ignored. Year 2 of our marriage. Thanksgiving. I'd spent a whole day shopping and prepping for what I thought was a small dinner for 2. Maybe her parents. Turkey, stuffing, 3 kinds of pie, the works. I felt proud, like a real adult. I came home the day before Thanksgiving to find 50 people in our living room. She'd posted on Facebook and invited everyone she knew. "Surprise," she'd said, beaming. "You always say we should be more social." I'd said that once, about having the neighbors over, not hosting a festival. I spent that whole night cooking for a crowd while Jessica played hostess, telling everyone how spontaneous she was. I smiled through it all because that's what you do, right? You keep the peace. Then came the pottery wheel incident. We'd been saving for a trip to Italy, Rome, maybe Florence. I'd been tucking away money for months. We were so close. Then one day I came home to find a huge pottery wheel in the living room. "It was on sale," she said, covered in clay. "I'm investing in my creativity." That wheel cost as much as our flights. She used it 3 times before it became an expensive table. We never got to Italy. Every time we got close, something else came up. Her car, her sister, some new crisis. The Italy fund turned into the Jessica Needs Something fund. And then there was the couch. Cream-colored, stupidly expensive, but she loved it. Said it made the place elegant. 3 months later, she spilled an entire bottle of red wine on it during a party, then laughed. "Now it has character," she said. I spent a week scrubbing stains while she posted photos of the ruined couch on Instagram with captions about embracing imperfections. It got hundreds of likes. The couch never recovered. "You good?" Rachel asked one afternoon, breaking into my thoughts. "You just made a face like you bit a lemon." "Just remembering stuff," I said. "Marriage stuff." "The greatest hits?" she asked, smiling knowingly. "You're finally replaying all the times she crossed a line, and you let it slide." She was right. Looking back, all those moments I brushed off or justified didn't look small anymore. They looked like what they were, the slow unraveling of everything. By the 7th day, Jessica's messages had gone through what felt like all 5 stages of grief. Only instead of getting to acceptance, she was stuck somewhere between denial and bargaining. "I've been praying," she wrote. "God told me to call you." I just stared at that text over breakfast. God told her to call me. The all-powerful creator of everything apparently had time to weigh in on Jessica's latest drama. I showed it to Rachel, who nearly spit out her coffee. "Well," she said, "we've officially reached the Jesus stage. That's new." Then my buddy Derek called. "Man, you've got to hear this," he said. "It's a masterpiece, like watching dominoes fall, but the dominoes are Jessica's reputation." Turns out Jessica had posted her side of the story on Facebook, trying to sound innocent. My family didn't buy it. My cousin Beth commented, "You left your husband stranded in another country. Why are you surprised he's mad?" Aunt Karen just left a single question mark, somehow more brutal than anything else. Even Derek's mom chimed in. This explains a lot about their marriage. After that, Jessica's friends started sharing stories. The car she borrowed and returned with no gas and a parking ticket. The countless times she'd been thoughtless. It was like a dam finally bursting. Years of pent-up frustration spilling out. Even her mother messaged me. "Tom," she wrote, "I owe you an apology. I kept telling myself Jessica was just creative and misunderstood. I see now I was making excuses. You deserve better." By day 8, I decided to be petty. Not cruel, just satisfying. I texted Jessica, "Thanks for everything. Rachel's been amazing." Seconds later, my phone lit up. She called over and over. I ignored each one. Then came the texts, fast and angry. "Who's Rachel? Tom, answer me. What does that mean? Are you serious right now?" Around noon, I picked up. "Tom," she screamed, "who the hell is Rachel?" "She's been helping me out this week," I said calmly. Since I got stranded." "What does that mean?" "It means she's been making sure I eat, don't get lost, and don't lose my mind while I deal with the fact that my wife might have committed a federal crime." "Don't exaggerate," Jessica snapped. "It was just a prank." "Right, of course. Leaving your husband in another country? Classic prank. Real knee slapper." "Is Rachel single? Are you sleeping with her?" "Why would that matter? You left me. What did you expect? That I'd just sit alone waiting for you to care again? You're being cruel. This isn't you." "You're right," I said. "The old me would have apologized for making you feel bad about abandoning me. But he's on vacation." I sipped my coffee. "Anything else? Rachel and I have plans this afternoon." Silence. then a shaky, plans. Yeah, you know, those things people make when they're not managing someone else's chaos. I can't believe this, she sobbed. Are you cheating on me? I laughed. Jessica, you left me in Mexico as a joke. You don't get to ask that. That right sailed away with you at 6:30 in the morning. That's not an answer. Here's one. Relax, it's just a prank. And I hung up. Rachel stared at me, stunned. Did you just quote her back at her? Yep, she grinned. That was cold and perfect. 2 weeks later, Derek called again. Jessica filed for divorce, he said. I waited for sadness, but all I felt was relief. How do you feel? He asked. Like I just got released from prison and didn't even know I was locked up. I stayed in Mexico for another month, working remotely and figuring out who I was without the chaos. Rachel and I spent time together. Not dating, just easy, simple company. Breakfasts, quiet afternoons, beach walks, no drama. One evening, watching the sunset, I said, you know what's weird? I'm happier now, even with everything falling apart, than I ever was married. That's not weird, Rachel said. You're finally not carrying someone else's baggage. You're traveling light. Later, she told me, this is the longest I've ever hung out with someone without wanting to run away. You're easy to be around. Same here, I said. We sat quietly. With Jessica, silence meant trouble. With Rachel, silence was peace. My phone buzzed. Jessica again. I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. I read it, then deleted it. No reply needed. Eventually, I flew home, got an apartment near a park, and started the divorce. Her lawyer tried to claim I'd abandoned her. Mine showed the texts and Facebook posts. The judge wasn't impressed. It ended fast. A year later, Rachel and I still talk. We visit each other, explore new cities, no pressure. I got a promotion, found a great therapist, started running. I wake up now and don't think, what fire do I need to put out today? I just think, what's for breakfast? Jessica posted something recently about growing from mistakes. Someone asked which mistakes. She didn't reply, probably too busy pretending to make pottery again. Next month, I'm going to Italy with Rachel. We've got the flights, hotels, and plans all set. This time, I know my travel partner won't vanish at 3 a.m. Because here's what I finally learned. Jessica didn't give me what I wanted when she left. She gave me what I needed, freedom. Freedom from fixing someone else's mess, from thinking love meant chaos, from losing myself in someone else's storm. And that version of me? He's doing great. Sometimes, the worst thing that happens turns out to be exactly what saves you. Getting left behind isn't the end. It's how you finally start moving forward. The joke was supposed to be on me. It never was. It was always on Jessica.